Go.
Streaming from South Africa to the world. This is the Stonks Go Moon podcast. What just happened? We break it down so you don't have to.
Welcome everyone to the Stonks Go Moon podcast. My guest today, Perry Carpenter. He is the Chief Human Risk Management Strategist over at Known Before. His new book is called FAIK, A Practical Guide to Living in a World of Deepfakes, Disinformation, and AI-Generated Deceptions. Welcome to the pod.
I'm a king of convoluted mouthful titles.
I got through it in one take. I'm so glad. What an honor and a privilege to have you on today.
Thank you.
You are known for your work in cybersecurity, and I think no time in history is that more prevalent. Today I want to talk to you about the human mind, specifically what makes us so vulnerable to manipulation, especially with deepfakes and all this AI-generated content that we're seeing online.
Yeah, that's the more I think about it, the more fascinating the same question becomes, because it's not necessarily about the technology. It's not about the scammer themselves. I think it's that our minds are masters at fooling themselves. I'm a guy, I grew up doing magic early on, in my grade school, college, and even some in my professional life. And what I keep realizing over and over and over is that we're a sucker for a good story.
Yeah.
And I think that regardless of what the scam is, that's the core of it, is that our minds are suckers and we buy into good stories.
So do you think our brain is basically tricking ourselves? Because if you think about the brain, it's an organ, right? It's a thing, it's part of but it's sort of a living thing, if I can put it like that. So do you think it's just our brains tricking ourselves, seeing what we want to see, or is there more behind it?
It's I think there's layers to it. I think there's a lot of us tricking ourselves into believing what we want to see, but there's a few models that we can go through to think about it. So one model that you may have heard of before is called the OODA loop. OODA is developed by a U.S. fighter pilot trainer back in the 50s and 60s, I think, a guy named John Boyd. And OODA stands for Observe, Orient, Decide, and Act. And so on the observation, actually those first two O's, I think, are the things where things go wrong for us. So if you think about being a scammer, on the observation side, that's where you're bringing in facts. So I can withhold certain facts, or I can manipulate facts, or I can give you the straight facts. If I'm withholding facts or manipulating facts, well, then the observation or the orientation around that's naturally going to be off, because you're making sense of nonsense at that point. You're trying to orient around already a lie, and then your decision and action flows from that. If I give you straight facts, but I manipulate the context of that, I manipulate the way that you orient around that, you're still, even though you're getting facts, your takeaway is a lie. And so I think in those first two O's are where the scammers start to manipulate. In all of that, we're telling ourselves stories, and we're potentially lying to ourselves as well. One other thing that I mention specifically in the book is there are four things that I think we're always fighting against, especially in online environments. I call them the four horsemen of online vulnerability. And so the first one represents confirmation bias. I call it the confirmation crusader. We're always telling ourselves a story. We're trying to find things we agree with. The second one is the emotional tempest. And that's the fact that we can get jerked around by things that are playing with authority or urgency or fear or anger, that makes us, play into a certain frame or orient around those fact patterns in a certain frame. The third one is the digital naif, and that's just digital illiteracy. So not knowing what's possible can mess up the way that we perceive things. And then the last one is the sower of discord. And it's, the anger factor, the fact that society right now, I think, as much, if not more than any time in history, is wanting to pull against itself and really create this us versus them narrative,
Yes.
which is still a story when you think
Yes.
about it, is those people are, or that guy's the bad guy. We're the heroes. We have our hero. And so we're going to go engage in this, big conflict that is good versus evil, or us versus them. And I think that that's kind of the mindset that we get into, and that the stories that our minds tell ourselves all the time.
Speaking about your book, in your book, you talked about the importance of adversarial thinking. How do you think leaning into that, getting to think like a hacker can help protect us from these modern day threats? Because sort of the old cliche is, to outthink them, you have to think like them.
Yeah, and I think that there's a lot of truth to that. So the first thing is when you understand the way a hacker thinks, that's neither good nor bad. A hacker is somebody that looks at a situation and goes, I bet nobody ever thought to do it this way.
Yes.
And they come at it from a completely different angle. And you can get really, really good outcomes from that. You can build things that people never thought was possible, and you can sell that, and you can improve society. At the same time, those are the things that bad actors are going to take advantage of as well, because you didn't think about it. You've not thought to protect it. And so when you think about adversarial thinking, it's kind of taking that bad actor view and saying, if I wanted to do the worst thing possible, or if I wanted to trick me with this, or get my information using this tool, what would I do? Or maybe even if I buy this thing and put it in my house, what vulnerabilities does that open up? What if I were to put that in somebody else's house, that Ring doorbell or whatever, what could I use that to in order to exploit them? And when you start asking those questions, it makes you see the world a little bit differently. And I'll give you one other example. In the last third of the book, I kind of propose a whole bunch of different little games that people can do on their own, or families can do together. And one of those is create a piece of disinformation. And you might think that that's like a really horrible thing to do, but as soon as you start to say, what is the narrative that I want to sell to somebody, the story that I want to sell, whether that's political or social or about an organization or something else, how would I frame that narrative? How might I capture that, put it in a picture or a video or an audio, and then how would I put it into the world? And when you ask and answer those questions for yourself in a very specific way, all of a sudden you'll start to view everything that lands in your inbox or in your news feed a little bit differently. You'll ask different questions about it.
I'm nodding my head the whole time, because I'm on the generation that didn't grow up with the internet. We are pre-internet. The Gen Z now is digital first, and we used to play those type of games where you would you would play cops and robbers, and you would play those type of games trying to deceive the others. I think we've lost that, right? We've lost that, because when at the advent of the internet came chat rooms, came video, came distractions, and we basically lost that art of make-believe and storytelling ourselves. So I was just nodding my head the whole time, because I think it's returning back to things that we've actually done before.
Yeah, and I think especially in the world that I live in, the cybersecurity world, there are people that specialize in that. There's an entire discipline around threat modeling and red teaming and penetration testing, where you're trying to break into things or think about systems in a way a bad actor would. And so there are disciplines that we can learn this from. And I also think in even general, like product design, the whole purpose of a focus group is to put your product in front of somebody and to see the way that they naturally react to it. Because a lot of times when we build something and we put it in the world, we're kind of caught into our own, to use the word again, our own story about how this is going to be used, how somebody's going to view it, the way they might interact with the screens and everything else. And then the only way you start to see What's really possible is when you put it in front of the little chaos monkeys that we are, it's just other humans.
Chaos monkeys, I love that term. Let's talk about deepfakes a bit. I mean, they are getting so sophisticated, right? Used to be when GPT just came out, or before GPT came out, we had DALL-E. You could say, no, man, this is AI. This is clearly, this is fake. Now, even someone like me that I would say I'm not going to toot my own horn, but I'm pretty good at spotting fakes, right? But even sometimes I have to go, whoa, is this real or is this fake? And I think when I go, and then I tell myself, if I have to pause and go and research and go and look, and then I go and look at the comments and people just going, they take that thing and they run with it. We aren't adapting socially quick enough to deal with deepfakes. How can we sort of get ahead of the curve?
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a really, really big situation that I think society has to figure out how to deal with. In the book, there's one concept I talk about that I call the exploitation zone, which is that humans adapt fairly slowly. Technology evolves very rapidly. And when you have a slow adapting society and a very fast evolving technology, you're creating this big gap, this big zone that people can exploit. Again, either for good or for bad. But if we're thinking about deepfakes and the misuse of this technology, there's an unsuspecting society out there that's confused and misled about what is possible and what's not. And even if I look at data from last year, there was a study that came out where we're almost 10 months into 2024 right now. In 2023, there was a study that said even if you warn people that within the next 5 videos they will see a deepfake, they're only accurate in picking that one out about 21.5% of the time.
That's with last year's tech.
That's with last year's tech, and a decently done deepfake. And about the same amount of time, they'll misattribute, they'll mispick, and they'll say that one of the legitimate ones is a deepfake. So we've really hit the crossover point where people cannot tell what's real and what's not real anymore, especially when it's just like stuck in their news feed or their social media feed. And so the way that I think we start to adapt to that is it becomes less about the question of, is this real or not? And it becomes more about the question of why does this thing exist in the first place? Why did it land in front of me? What is it making me want to feel? What do I feel when I see that? What is it making me want to do or believe? So it goes back to the story again, and the fact that our minds just consume, and the language that they speak is stories. So that bit of disinformation or that deep fake or that whatever lands in front of you, that is telling a story that is evoking all those other things that we already talked about.
So in order to do that, just from my perspective, you need quite a high level of emotional intelligence, right? I mean, that's things to pause and verify. It's not a common trait.
It's not instinctual at all.
No. So how can people train their emotional intelligence? How can you, I don't know the correct word, but acquire, train, grow, whatever that is. I mean, because I'm with you, you require emotional intelligence, but some people are born with it, other people don't, but it's something that you can learn and you can acquire. So how do we do that?
So I think it's a combination of things. One is we know that we can build habits. And so once you have an awareness of the fact that you need to start to slow down and take a breath and evaluate and do all the things that we know that you should do, well, then in the moment, as you start to react, maybe that little gut instinct comes up and goes, wait, take a second. Why are you feeling this in the first place? That, that anger that made you about to share that or put that comment. Maybe it's time just to take a breath and investigate this for a second. So I think that what we can start to get towards is an awareness of what's possible out there. And that comes through news and media and podcasts like your own, of just showing what's possible. And then people also have to recognize they're not as good at detecting this stuff as they think that they are. I'm not as good at detecting it as I think I am. And once you realize that, then you start to get this healthy skepticism, not a debilitating skepticism where you're frozen, but one where you're like in that instant where you're about to react, you go, oh, wait, maybe. And then you dive in and start to ask more critical questions and enter what we would, in the behavioral economics field would call that system 2 level thinking, where you're not just reacting anymore, but you're slowing down a little bit. And I think we can train that. And I've seen it trained. The company I work for that does security training does that all day long.
Okay. Yeah. So there's practical.
Yeah, and society can be trained to do that as well. I mean, the biggest part with society, though, is like, where do you start? And I think news, media, podcasts, everything else, they're starting at one angle. The other angle we have to start at is early education with kids. And we see that in some other countries. I'm here in the U.S. You're in Australia. You're in South Africa.
Yes.
In many of the European countries, digital literacy is considered like, it is the thing that they really want to focus on. So Estonia and Switzerland and Finland and others are really building in disinformation, misinformation, malinformation awareness, and a lot of digital literacy skills on exactly the slow down, take a breath, and investigate mindset.
That's really interesting. Last question before I let you go. In that emotional intelligence that you're building, do you think we need to take a step back from social media and maybe once you've taken a step back, phase it in slowly again? Sort of, if I can use it, sort of as when you kick a drug habit, you could go cold turkey, right? You don't like sort of take it bit away. You cut it out completely. And I've talked to a couple of people saying they want to limit their social media, and then they try and do like if they spend 2 hours a day, they go 1 hour a day.
Yeah.
But that's not, to me, really making a difference. What's your feeling about that?
So I do give a challenge in my book where I, as one option, you can do that. Because I do think when you get away from it and you come back, your sensibilities are a little bit different. At the same time, for some people and some families, it's not realistic to do that. There's a lot of willpower, a lot of buy-in, a lot of habit. Everything else is, kind of works against that in today's society.
Yes.
So on the flip side, if you can't do that detox, what you can do is you can be intentional for short amounts of time. And what you can do is say, I'm going to take the next 20 minutes and I'm just going to let me assume everything is rigged. And let me learn how to investigate every claim in this. Let me intentionally find, 5 news sources or 5 weird social media claims and run through a process of investigation. Because now you're investing a short amount of time. You're still on the platform that is, the danger potentially. It's the vector that's going to be utilized against you. And you're starting to build the habit that we want to get out of that.
So thank you so much for joining me today. If the listeners want to go and connect with you, find out more about what it is that you do, where can they do that?
LinkedIn is where I'm most active,
awesome.
Though you will also find me on Twitter or X or whatever we're calling that today. And then if you're interested in the book, the website for that is thisbookisfaik, FAIK.com.
Love it. And we'll put all the links in the comments. Thank you so much for joining me.
All right,
and
thank
to
you.
our listeners, peace, love, and prosperity. And I'll catch you in the next one. Cheers.
Perfect words, but they taste so vile. You paint your face in shades of black and white, but I see the cracks you're breaking in the light. You think I'm wonderful for the show, but I read between the lines, you'll never know. Your truth's a paper wall, tearing up the seams. You wear your fake crown, but it's all just a dream. I see right through you, no place to hide. You're just a hollow boy, lost inside. You're just a hollow boy, lost inside. You talk like you've got it under control, but the lies in your eyes dig a deeper hole. You hide behind words like a coat of steel, but I know what's real, yeah, I know what's real. You play the king, but your castle's made of sand, falling apart, slipping out of your hands. Your truth's a paper wall, tearing out the seams. You wear your fake crown, but it's all just a dream. I see right through you, no place to hide. You're just a hollow boy, lost inside. You play the king, but your castle's made of sand, falling apart, slipping out of your hands. Your truth's a paper wall, tearing out the seams. You wear your fake crown, but it's all just a dream. I see right through you, no place to hide. You're just a hollow boy, lost inside. Lost inside. You're lost inside, fading away with nowhere to hide. I'm not the fool you think you see. Your perfect mask, it's crumbling free. I see the pieces broken.